running, never bothered about what could be coming. Every day we danced and life was smiling. We were young and drunk in love.
Well, hello everyone, and it has been a while since I have filmed from a vehicle. Actually, it's been a while since I have filmed anywhere but in my house. So today during nap time, I've been having kind of a rough time the last few days, and so today during nap time, Ryan took the baby monitor and told me to go out for a drive. So I drove out. What I like to do on my drives is I like to go out to neighborhoods that we have looked at potentially moving to and drive around and see what the neighborhoods look like, what the houses look like, what the shopping in the area is like, stuff like that. Because in order for us to move closer to Ryan's work, we are going to have to move kind of more like country than I'm used to. I know some of you guys live in the actual country and you guys would laugh at me calling these areas country. But I feel like if there's cornfields like within 2 minutes of your house, then you can call it the country. At least that's my like bar that I've set. And I grew up in the city. I've always lived in the city. I've lived just south of Chicago or in Chicago my entire life. So it's kind of weird for me to imagine moving anywhere that's not quite city. But that is not why we're here today. Oh, this is turning into like a crazy vlog. But anyway, while I was out driving around and looking at things and, figuring out if I like this area or not for us to eventually move to, I thought it would be neat if I just did a video talking to you guys about how I knew that I was pregnant with twins before I found out I was pregnant with twins. Because it's something that I have mentioned and people are always astonished, because a lot of people ask me, were you shocked when you found out you had twins? Like, what was your reaction? What was Ryan's reaction? And I was not at all shocked. I actually would have been shocked if I did not have twins. And so when I tell people that, it's always like, oh my gosh, what? How is that even possible? How do you know that you're having twins when it's just there's a chance everyone could be having twins, but it's not a very high chance. So how did I know that? So I just sort of jotted down a list, and I'm just going to go off of memory, but earlier I was writing down a list and thinking through all of the different things that I just knew. Some of them are more symptom related, and then some of them are more gut feeling related. So let's just get started. For those of you that are new around here, hi, by the way, I'm Rachel, and I'm currently pregnant with twins. I would love if you could subscribe to the channel and give this video a thumbs up, but don't mind my shameless little plug. If you are new around here, the way that I got pregnant was not, your typical pregnancy story. So I got pregnant after over a year of infertility. I went to see a fertility specialist, and we did a procedure called IUI. And if you don't know what that is, just do a quick Google search. I won't go into the whole thing on this video, but I do have other videos where I talk about it a little bit more, and I will have more videos talking about IUI coming up soon. But for the time being, I don't want to get too into it because it's very lengthy if I start talking about it. But in the meantime, I did an IUI, and so we did have drugs that stimulated my ovaries to produce eggs, because basically I have something called PCOS, another thing that I talk about in plenty of videos and we'll talk about in more videos, but if you're interested in looking it up, you can. And if you have PCOS, some people call it PCOS, by the way, but if you have PCOS, you don't ovulate the way that a normal person does. And it's just your hormones are different. It's just different. And so it makes it more difficult for you to be able to track things to get pregnant. And so we had a drug that I basically ingested pills that help me to ovulate or stimulate growth in my follicles. And then I gave myself a shot, like in the belly. I shot myself with something called a trigger shot. And that tells your brain to say, okay, now it's time to release those eggs, right? So that shot actually contains HCG. So HCG is the hormone that your body starts to produce when you're pregnant. You don't normally have that hormone, and if you do, it's in very, very small doses. And so it's really, really like undetectable unless you are pregnant or going through menopause or sometimes doing cancer treatments will make you produce that hormone. And so the trigger shot that they gave me, or that I gave myself, I should say, made me have HCG in my system. So what they tell you is that you can go about it two ways. You can not use a pregnancy test at all until 14 days past that ovulation, which is when you get your IUI treatment. So I would have had to wait 14 days and not test at all. And I'm not that type of person. So I'm like addicted to pregnancy testing, and so you probably should have taken out stock in pregnancy tests during my infertility because I was testing a lot. It's just, for some reason, it helps me to stay calm and like ease my nerves a little bit. And so, some people are the exact opposite. Some people, they can't take tests. They can't even buy them because it causes too much stress and drama. But for me, I needed it. So the second option that you can do after having your IUI and your trigger shot is you can do what they call testing out your trigger shot. And so what you would do is every single day, twice a day, and morning and night, you take a pregnancy test and you pee on you do a little dipstick and you check and see if it still shows the two lines. So most of the time, by about day 8, day 9, those lines should start to be fading or disappearing completely. Like the HCG levels in your system should get out of your system. And then if you're pregnant, your egg would implant, and then slowly your body would start creating that hormone again, and that hormone would become detectable by like day, sometimes 12, sometimes 14, but that's why they say 14, because usually you're not, sorry guys, I just came to a dead end in this neighborhood that I'm unfamiliar with, but usually you are not, producing your HCG hormone until several days after you implant in your uterine wall. So I decided, okay, that's my route. I'm going to test out my pregnancy tests. So I did the dipstick for every day and night, and the lines never got lighter, never went away. They got like a little bit lighter at nighttime, but that's pretty normal because things fluctuate throughout the day. But they never got lighter to the point where I was like, okay, the test is, or the shot is out of my system and now it's like real HCG. So I actually didn't know if I was pregnant or if I just like still had the HCG in my system from the shot, because it never got lighter. So I thought I was testing out, but obviously, you know, since it never got lighter, I had no way of knowing. And so I had to wait to find out from the doctor when they did my blood test to tell me if I was actually pregnant or not. And I didn't even want to believe it. But that being said, long story short, I had an inkling that because my HCG levels were so strong right off the bat that my trigger shot never even tested out of my system, that I had to have higher HCG for some reason. And a big component in having high levels of HCG early on is when you have 2 babies, because you have twice as much, you know, hormones being stimulated in your system when you have 2 babies. So that was my first clue that I possibly was having twins, was the fact that my HCG shot never tested out. I always had levels of HCG in my system. Okay, one moment while I figure out where the heck I'm going, because I don't want to get lost and I gotta go. So, that was a very long story to get to my first point, but it kind of needed a little bit of that backstory to help you guys understand like where my head was at and why I thought that that might be the case. So my second inkling that I could have been pregnant with twins came like, let's see, they called me at 14 days past ovulation and told me my levels, which I believe was 214. But guys, I don't remember at this point, but I'll put my HCG levels down here on the screen for you guys. So then I would have to come back in every couple of days and get my blood drawn again to make sure that my levels were rising. So I had a miscarriage back in November, and this was when I had just first started my fertility treatments. I actually hadn't even started when I got pregnant, and then I had the miscarriage, but I had just started seeing them for consultation at the fertility clinician, and I found out I was pregnant. They tested my levels. My levels had started at 16, went down to a 10, and then it went to 0. So that was when that's when I had my miscarriage. So this second time, when my first blood test started out at 214, I was like, oh my gosh, like that's amazing. And I just thought I was just happy at first, because I was like, wow, that's super high. It's way better than the last time I'm not having a miscarriage. Like that was my hope, you know, that like everything was gonna be okay because the level was high. And so then I got my next test wasn't quite 48 hours later, and my numbers almost doubled. It was like 380 something, I believe, but I'll put the number down here again so you guys can see it. And then my next test was a couple days later, and my numbers like tripled. Like they were like in the thousands. And I don't remember exactly what they were again, but like I said, I'll put the number right here. And so when I started seeing how fast my HCG numbers were like duplicating, I got this idea like, okay, my HCG levels are really high. So I actually went on this website. You can go on this website to like check your HCG levels, and you can compare it to like other singletons, other twin pregnancies, and other triple pregnancies, and see where your numbers lie. And my numbers were really consistent with other twin pregnancies. And so when I looked at that chart and saw that my numbers were kind of falling in there, I was like, okay, this actually makes a lot of sense. But they tell you not to like base anything off of those numbers, because some people just naturally have higher HCG numbers and some people have naturally lower HCG numbers. So it's not consistent. It's not like everybody whose numbers tripled are pregnant with twins or multiples. Some women, their HCG levels stay really low even when they're pregnant with twins or multiples. So it wasn't something that I could say like was definite that I was having twins, but it definitely helped kind of put that thought in my mind. So at this point, I had just left for our vacation in Florida. So we went to Florida with Ryan's work. We started in Jacksonville, went down to Orlando, whatever. We had a fun trip. There are vlogs of that trip if you'd like to see. I took Chloe to Disney for a couple days. I'll link them down in my description box so that you guys can go check them out if you haven't seen them. But it was a really fun trip. And while we were on this trip, I kept saying to Ryan, like, the babies, and Ryan was like, you gotta stop saying babies, because like if you're only pregnant with one and you're gonna keep saying babies, it's gonna get confusing, or like other people are gonna be confused. And I was like, I can't help it. Like the word babies is just like, it's word vomit. It's just coming out. Like I have no control. It's just like my brain knew and like told my mouth that there was more than one. So while we were in Florida, I've been doing this thing ever since I was pregnant with Chloe. No matter where we go on vacation or road trip or whatever, I get Chloe a postcard and I write her a little message about everything we did on that trip. And I have an entire binder full of, our last 2, almost and a half, because like I think I was 8 weeks pregnant with her, the first postcard I bought. So we have like 2.5 years worth of, postcards filled with all these like letters to her about all the vacations that we've taken and all the trips that we've gone on and stuff. And so it's just a special memory. And I wanted to do that again for this next baby, at the time baby. And when I was in Disney, I found a postcard that I loved for Chloe at like this Disney outlet store. They had these like super adorable hand-drawn postcards that were on sale. And so I grabbed one for Chloe, and then they had 2 other designs, and I really liked them. But I was like, well, I only need one more. So I grabbed one and I bought it. And then like 2 days later, I just had this like feeling. And so I went back to the outlet store and I bought the other postcard because I couldn't get it out of my head. I just had this feeling like, you need to go buy that other postcard. You need a second postcard because there's 2 babies and you need to be able to write them both letters about this trip. And so I just did. I mean, I thought, what's the big deal? It's $2. Like if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but it's $2 and I'll be upset if I am pregnant with twins and I don't buy it. So went back, bought the other postcard, got 3 total postcards, and that was that. So at this point, I still don't know I have twins. I am, just out in Florida and enjoying my vacation with my family. But I started to have some crazy dreams, and like things were in 2s and doubles, and I was like, these dreams were crazy. If you have ever had pregnancy dreams, you understand what I'm talking about. Like, they are bizarro world, crazy dreams, and nothing like your normal dreams are. And so those dreams were like another sign to me where I was like, it just feels like my body is trying to tell me something. What is going on? Now, if we rewind before my IUI, the week of my IUI, I was making eggs in my kitchen, and I cracked an egg into the bowl, and it was a double egg, like a twin yolk egg. And I have been, my whole life, I have felt like eggs have told me something. Like the day before we left and found out that my HCG levels were coming down, I dropped an egg out of my hand on the floor and it cracked and the yolk exploded. And I started crying and I told Ryan that I thought something was wrong with the baby. And I have had dreams about eggs when people that I know have had miscarriages and the eggs have broken. I don't know what it is, if it's something that's real or if it's just something that I'm drawing connections to, but it sure as heck feels real to me because I have seen these connections over the years with eggs and pregnancies. And so I actually took a picture of the double egg, and I will include it right here. I also, speaking of eggs, the day after we found out that we were pregnant with twins, when we told my in-laws, my mother-in-law sent me a picture because that morning she cracked an egg into a bowl, and lo and behold, it was a twin egg, and she said, I think this is a sign. And so I will, if I can find that picture, I'll include that one here too. So that was another weird way that I felt like I was having twins, was I had taken that picture of the egg when I hadn't even gone in for my IUI. It was like a sign that I was going to get pregnant with twins. So I have pretty much felt like I was going to have twins basically my entire life. So my mom is a twin, and maybe just because of the fact that my mom is a twin, and because of the fact that my grandma had 3 twin pregnancies, and you know, it's just always been in my head that twins could be a possibility for me. Because of that, maybe I have always felt like I was going to have twins. But it's really interesting because I did a project in 5th grade, and I bet my mom probably still has it somewhere. And I remember very clearly, they said, what is your life going to be like in 20 years? And you had to cut out stuff from magazines and glue it to like describe your life in 20 years. So on mine, there was a set of toddler twins, a boy and a girl. And I clearly remember putting that on there and like telling my teacher that I was going to have twin babies. And that I think is like kind of cool and crazy that like even when I was in like 5th grade, I was so sure of the fact that I was going to have twins. And then here we are today, and I'm pregnant with twins. So really crazy, but kind of cool stuff like that has been going on basically my entire life to show me like slow signs that maybe one day this is going to happen to you. I'm not saying that everyone that feels like they're going to have twins does end up having twins, but in my case, it ended up happening. So I do think that that's pretty cool. Another thing that I think is really funny is when we were pregnant with Chloe, people would constantly ask me, especially when I was working, like brides and, you know, whatnot, they would always ask me, how many kids do you want? And my answer was always the same. So, you know, when you're a hairdresser or makeup artist, you tend to have like certain answers stored up in your head that you can just toss out, and usually they have a little bit of a funny joke with them, and it's just easy because you have new clients all the time, so you can use the same joke and same story. So my joke was always the same. Well, I would love to have 3 kids. My husband only wants 2, so I have to get pregnant with twins the second time so I can get 3 kids without my husband being mad at me. And I've been literally saying that joke for years since I was pregnant with Chloe. And I just found it so funny that it actually worked out that way. And my husband actually said to his mom, like a couple days after we told them that we were pregnant with twins, he told her, I guess I should have known Rachel would get pregnant with twins because somehow the universe always works out in her favor. He has this mindset that somehow I will things to happen and the universe just lets them happen. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I do have generally a positive outlook, or try to have a positive outlook, and I try to put positive energy out there and hope that positive energy returns to me. So if that's what's going on, I'm totally okay with it. But I just find it so funny that I had joked and joked about it so many times. I mean, hundreds of times I've said that joke to clients, and then it ended up being true. It's so funny. So that is another way that I jokingly knew I was having twins. But I do have a couple more symptoms that I was having that were kind of more normal for people who are having twins. So besides having this extremely strong gut feeling and this just idea that I was pregnant with twins, and having the HCG numbers and things tell me that it was a possibility, I also had some typical twin pregnancy symptoms. So one of my biggest symptoms that I had was nausea early on, when I had not had any nausea with my first pregnancy. And I have heard that your nausea can be related to heightened HCG levels. So people who have really high HCG levels tend to be more nauseous than other people. So that would make sense that in a singleton pregnancy I wouldn't be super nauseous, but then in a twin pregnancy I would, when I have more hormones going through my system. So that is definitely one of the symptoms that I showed pretty early on. I also, like I said before, I had crazy dreams, and I started waking up in the middle of the night at about like 3 a.m. and I would be wide awake for like 2 hours, and that's continued pretty consistently throughout the whole first trimester of my pregnancy. And after doing some research, I guess it turns out that a lot of times women with multiples will wake up in the middle of the night because that is when your hormones do a huge surge. So if you're only pregnant with one and you do get a surge of hormones, you might not wake up, or it might not bother you as much because it's not as high levels. When you're pregnant with multiples and you get this huge surge of hormones in the middle of the night, that's twice as high or 3 times as high as, you know, your typical pregnant woman, it's going to affect what's happening in your brain, and it might wake you up or might cause you to have crazy dreams or, you know, other symptoms. So I thought that was really, really interesting, and just another kind of cool symptom. I did not have heavy early weight gain. In fact, I haven't gained any weight yet this pregnancy, which it's kind of split down the middle. Like half the twin moms gain weight super, super early, super, super fast, and like bump out really early. And then half the twin moms are nauseous and not able to hold down as much food and stuff like that, and then don't end up gaining much weight at all until well into their second trimester. So I think that's not really a great signal to whether or not you're pregnant with twins, because it could be one way or the other. But in my case, I didn't gain any weight. My nausea was too high for me to consume enough calories that I would be putting on pounds. So after all that was said and done, we got back from Florida, and we ended up getting back a day early. So we were originally going to be coming back on a Friday, but because something happened with Ryan's work where he didn't need to be there the last day, so we ended up moving our flight to a Thursday instead. And I was lucky enough to be able to move my doctor's appointment. So instead of having me come in on Monday to do my ultrasound, my very first ultrasound, they were able to have me come in on a Friday to do my ultrasound. And so when I went in, I said to Ryan, there are going to be 2 babies when we go in. And if there's not 2 babies, I am going to be in complete shock. Ryan said, Rach, I don't want you to like get your hopes up that there's going to be 2 babies. So like, don't go in there thinking that. And I was like, I can't help it. Like, that's what I think. So we went in, and the ultrasound tech is doing the little wand and, you know, trying to get a good angle, and she's looking at the computer, and she turns the screen towards us and she says, here is your baby. And you see this little, you know, black circle with a tiny little white blob in it, because, you know, I'm like 7 weeks pregnant at the time, maybe 6.5 weeks pregnant at the time. So the baby is like the size of nothing. So she says, there's your baby. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I was wrong. You know, in my head, I'm thinking there's only one, and that's okay. I love this baby no matter what. And she looks at Ryan and says, and it's a good thing you're sitting down because, and she moves her hand just ever so slightly, and she shows a second circle and says, here is your other baby. And I said, oh my God, I knew it. And I started crying. It was actually like kind of funny because I really was so certain, and I thought for a moment that I was wrong, and I was like, I guess I'm wrong. And then all of a sudden all of that went away, and I was totally validated because I wasn't wrong. I was right, and I was having twins, and I am having twins. And so it was just pretty crazy. And then shortly after that, we went to my parents' house. They live about a block away from us, and we told them that we were having twins. And well, actually, I handed them the ultrasound. I handed it to my mom, and she's looking at it. She's like, oh, little baby, what? Oh my God, you know, and got all excited. Showed it to my dad, very similar reaction. And Ryan's parents live, far away from us, so we had to FaceTime them to tell them. And so we FaceTimed them, and we took the ultrasound and we held it up, and we just said, here you go, and just like waited for them to recognize it. And it took a minute. They recognized after a minute. I think over the phone it's a little hard because it's kind of blurry, but then they freaked out. And my mother-in-law said, how did you know? How did you know you were going to have twins? You said that you would. I don't know how I knew. I did. And it was a really pretty cool reaction. So all in all, there were some physical signs, some hormonal signs, and some otherworldly signs that all told me that I was having twins before I even knew that I had actually had two little babies growing inside of me. And so for all of you who have been asking how I knew that I was having twins, there you have it. There's the story. There are all the details. If you have any questions, or if you are curious if you're having twins maybe and you're having signs, make sure you leave those comments down below for me because I love to hear that stuff. If you are having twins and you had any similar experiences, I would absolutely love if you would let me know that as well down in the comments. But please, if you have any questions, let me know. And if you really enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. That way I know to make similar videos in the future, know that you guys like my story times, and that I'm not just talking to myself here. Anyway, thank you guys again so much. I love you all so much. I am just over the moon with how my channel has been doing lately and how it's been growing, and that's all thanks to you guys. You guys make this possible for me, and thank you again from the bottom of my heart. All right, loves. Well, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
We were young and we were free and running, never bothered about what could be coming. Every day we danced and life was smiling.